The silent departure. The grand forum of the Galactic Commerce Assembly stretched across 3 kilometers of polished obsidian floor. Representatives from 380 species filled the tiered seating arrangements, each section modified for different atmospheric needs, gravity preferences, and biological requirements. Some delegates floated in suspension fields. Others rested in pools of liquid methane. A few existed as pure energy, contained within magnetic bottles. Director Marcus Chun stood at the human delegation platform, located in Section 7 of the Outer Ring. The positioning was deliberate. Humans had always been placed in the peripheral zones, far from the central decision-making areas, where the major powers conducted real business. The acoustics were poor here. The lighting was an afterthought. The translation feeds often lagged by several seconds. Marcus had stood in this exact spot 217 times over his 15-year tenure. He had delivered reports on infrastructure maintenance, logistics coordination, and technical support services. He had presented solutions to problems that other species created and expected humans to fix. He had done this with patience and professionalism, even as his recommendations were filed away and forgotten. Today would be different. The session chairman, a towering Zenthari named Kale Mordrin, was reviewing mineral extraction quotas from the Helix cluster. His species had dominated galactic trade for millennia, their forearms gesturing expressively as he discussed profit margins and shipping schedules. The Zenthari had a reputation for efficiency, though Marcus had learned that their efficiency relied heavily on systems they neither built nor maintained. Marcus waited for the appropriate moment in the procedural timeline. According to Assembly rules, any member could request floor time during the open commentary period. Humans rarely used this privilege. What was the point when nobody listened? He activated his communication node. The gesture was automatic, practiced, unremarkable. The United Terran Collective formally withdraws from the Galactic Commerce Assembly, effective immediately, Marcus said. His voice was calm, measured, neither angry nor apologetic. We thank the Assembly for 243 years of cooperation. All human personnel will vacate Assembly facilities and operations within 96 hours. Transition documentation has been filed in accordance with Charter Protocol 7-4-Alpha. The chamber continued its background hum of conversation for approximately 4 seconds. Then silence rippled outward from the human platform, like a stone dropped into still water. Kale Mordrin turned his primary eyes toward Marcus. His secondary eyes remained fixed on his data screens. Director Chun, this is highly irregular. Is this a negotiating tactic regarding the recent trade tariff dispute? No, Chairman Mordrin. This is a formal withdrawal. The paperwork is complete. Our decision is final. A Quillan representative, a crystalline being named Thres Vola, chimed in with a sound like breaking glass. Surely the humans are not serious. Where will you go? What will you do? The Assembly provides structure, protection, trade access. Marcus allowed himself a small smile. We will return to Earth and associated human colonies. We will continue our civilization independently. The Assembly has provided many things, Chairman, but we have determined that the costs outweigh the benefits. Laughter began somewhere in the upper tiers. It spread quickly, a wave of amusement washing through the chamber. The Zenthari clicked their mandibles in their version of chuckling. The Vorlesh released pheromones that translated as mockery. Even the usually serious Quillan representatives vibrated with what passed for humor among their kind. Dramatic as always, Kale Mordrin said, his tone patronizing. Humans and their flair for theater. Very well, Director Chen. Submit your grievances through proper channels. We will review them in due course, as we always do. There are no grievances to submit, Chairman. Only a departure to execute. Good luck with your mineral quotas. Marcus turned and walked out of the Grand Forum. Behind him, the laughter continued. The Assembly returned to its business, confident that the humans would reconsider within a few days. Withdrawal was complicated. Withdrawal was expensive. Withdrawal was simply not done by species as integrated into the Assembly as humanity had become. They did not understand that integration had been the problem all along. Across the galaxy, the message reached human workers simultaneously. Dr. Sarah Okonkwo received hers while calibrating the atmospheric processors on Station Triumph, a massive trading hub in the Cordova sector. She had maintained these processors for 18 years, keeping the delicate balance that allowed 47 different species to breathe comfortably in shared spaces. Her supervisor, a Zenthari named Valrek, noticed her reviewing her data pad during a routine inspection. Something urgent, Dr. Okonkwo. Yes, actually. I'm initiating shutdown protocols for all human-maintained systems. We're leaving. Valrek's forearms froze mid-gesture. Leaving. Leaving what? Leaving the station. Leaving the assembly. Going home. Sarah moved to her primary workstation and began the carefully sequenced shutdown procedure. The processors would continue operating on automated cycles, but without constant adjustment. They would begin drifting out of optimal parameters within weeks. You cannot simply leave, Valrek said, his tone shifting from confusion to something approaching concern. These systems require daily maintenance. The processor arrays alone need constant monitoring. I've uploaded all technical documentation to the station database. Everything is labeled and explained. Your engineering staff should be able to handle it. Sarah did not look up from her work. She had written those technical manuals herself, translating complex human engineering concepts into simplified galactic standard terminology. She had tried to make it as easy as possible. But the manuals are just procedures. They do not explain the reasoning behind your adjustments. They do not cover unusual scenarios. Then your engineers will need to learn through experience, the same way we did. Sarah finished the final sequence and logged out of the system. 18 years of her life, and Valrek had never once asked her to explain her work in detail. He had been content to reap the benefits without understanding the complexity. She packed her few personal belongings into a small container. A photograph of her family on Earth, a decorative stone from the Martian Highlands, a commendation certificate that the station had given her after she prevented a catastrophic system failure that would have killed thousands. The certificate had been presented at a small ceremony with no media coverage. Meanwhile, Valrek had received a major award for exceptional station safety management that same year. Dr. Okonkwo, please. We can discuss improved terms, better compensation, perhaps a promotion to senior engineering consultant. Sarah looked at him for a long moment. Valrek, you don't even know what I do. You think I adjust dials and monitor displays. You've called my work routine maintenance in every performance review. You've never asked me to explain the mathematics behind atmospheric chemistry or the quantum mechanics of the carbon cascade filters. You've never wanted to know because knowing would mean admitting that what I do is not simple. She walked toward the exit. The manuals are in the system. Good luck. Similar conversations played out on stations, colonies, and facilities throughout assembly space. Humans shut down operations, uploaded documentation, and departed. Most had worked in positions that other species considered beneath them. Technical support, infrastructure management, systems coordination, the unglamorous work that kept civilization functioning. Engineer Robert Tanaka had spent 22 years managing power distribution for the entire Vega sector. His neural interface had allowed him to monitor and adjust thousands of power nodes simultaneously, maintaining stable energy flow to mining operations, residential habitats, and industrial facilities. He worked with 17 different power generation technologies, each requiring unique understanding. His replacement, a highly educated Vorlesh technician named Sreth, watched nervously as Robert disconnected from the neural interface for the last time. The system seems complex, Sreth observed. It is complex, Robert confirmed. You'll be managing base load, peak demand fluctuations, emergency reserves, and grid stability across 43 different installations. The AI assists with routine balancing, but you'll need to make judgment calls during unusual situations. And these unusual situations occur how frequently? Daily. Sometimes hourly. Robert gathered his belongings. The documentation covers standard procedures. The rest you'll figure out as you go. But surely you can stay for a transition period, perhaps 6 months of training. Robert had requested training support for his role 5 times over the years. Each request had been denied due to budget constraints. "I'm sure you'll manage. Your credentials are impressive." 3 hours after Robert departed, the first power fluctuation hit a residential habitat in the outer Vegas stations. Nothing dangerous, just a momentary brownout. Shref made what seemed like a logical adjustment to compensate. The adjustment created a cascade effect that took down power to 3 mining facilities. Shref spent the next 14 hours trying to restore stability while operations ground to a halt. The pattern repeated across assembly space. Systems that had run smoothly for decades suddenly became unstable. Supply chains that had operated like clockwork began experiencing delays. Communication networks that had connected the galaxy without interruption started showing gaps in coverage. Dr. Elena Vasquez had been managing medical equipment maintenance for the Assembly Health Coordination Network. She ensured that diagnostic machines, surgical systems, and life support equipment functioned properly across 200 medical facilities. The equipment came from dozens of manufacturers, each using different operating principles. Her successor lasted 3 days before a critical surgical system failed mid-operation because nobody had performed the preventive maintenance that Elena had scheduled. The patient survived, but the incident triggered an investigation that revealed just how many maintenance procedures Elena had been handling personally. Back on Earth, Marcus Chin sat in his apartment overlooking the Pacific Ocean. He had not seen natural water in 15 years. Assembly stations had water, but it was recycled, processed, controlled. This ocean moved according to its own rhythms, responding to forces humanity did not control. His communication device chimed constantly with messages from former colleagues. Some were angry. Some were frightened. Most were simply confused. Had they done the right thing? Would the assembly collapse without them? What happened now? Marcus did not answer immediately. He watched the waves and thought about the decades humanity had spent trying to earn respect that never came. They had fixed problems, prevented disasters, and maintained the invisible infrastructure that made galactic civilization possible. And they had been rewarded with peripheral platforms, poor acoustics, and casual dismissal. The assembly would continue. Systems would fail, then be repaired. Other species would learn to handle the work humans had done, or they would find different solutions. Either way, it was no longer humanity's concern. Marcus finally composed a response to send to all the humans who had messaged him. "We made the right choice. We were never valued for what we did. We were simply used. That ends now. Watch what happens next. They will either learn or they will fail. Either outcome proves we were right to leave." He sent the message and turned off his communication device. Tomorrow he would start thinking about what humanity would build next. Tonight, he just wanted to watch the ocean and remember what it felt like to be home. In the Grand Forum of the Galactic Commerce Assembly, Cale Mordrin reviewed reports of minor technical issues across assembly space. Nothing catastrophic yet, just small inconveniences. Power fluctuations, supply delays, equipment malfunctions. He dismissed them as coincidental. Complex systems always had occasional problems. He did not connect the problems to humanity's departure. That would come later, when coincidence became pattern, and pattern became crisis. For now, he returned to his mineral quotas and trade schedules, confident that the Assembly's bureaucracy would continue as it always had. The galaxy had not yet realized what it had lost. But it would. Soon enough it would. The catastrophic realization. 6 months had passed since humanity's departure, and the Galactic Commerce Assembly was drowning in chaos it refused to acknowledge. Cale Mordrin sat in his administrative office, reviewing incident reports that had piled up like debris after storm. The numbers told a story he did not want to believe. Power grid failures, up 340%. Supply chain disruptions, up 412%. Equipment malfunctions, up 678%. Medical incidents, up 291%. Communication blackouts, up 523%. Every sector showed the same pattern. Systems that had functioned reliably for decades were now failing with alarming frequency. The Assembly's response had been to form investigative committees, hire consultants, and generate reports. None of it helped. The failures continued accelerating. Cale's personal assistant, a young Zentari named Thex, entered carrying another stack of urgent requests. Chairman Mordrin, the Cordova sector is requesting emergency support. Their atmospheric processors are drifting out of balance. 3 species are experiencing respiratory distress in shared spaces. Has Station Triumph not resolved this yet? They have engineering staff. They have tried, sir. The chief engineer says the systems are too complex. They are requesting technical assistance from specialists. Thex hesitated. They specifically requested human specialists. Kale's forearms tensed. Humans are no longer part of the assembly. Find alternative specialists. We have tried, sir. The Quillen engineers we sent lasted 2 weeks before admitting they could not understand the processor architecture. The Vorlesh technicians refused the assignment after reviewing the technical requirements. What about the manuals? The humans left documentation. The manuals explain what to do, sir. They do not explain why. The engineers say they need to understand the underlying principles to handle unexpected situations, and those principles are not documented. Kale dismissed Thex and pulled up the technical manuals Dr. Sarah Okonkwo had uploaded before leaving. He was not an engineer, but he could read specifications. The documents were clear, detailed, professionally written. Step-by-step procedures for every maintenance task. Diagnostic protocols for common problems. Safety procedures for emergency situations. What the manuals did not contain was understanding. They told technicians which buttons to press, but not how to recognize when the standard procedures would not work. They provided formulas without explaining the principles behind them. They were cookbooks written for chefs who already knew how to cook. Dr. Okonkwo had tried to make it simple, and in doing so, had revealed just how complex her work actually was. You could not simplify expertise. You could only pretend it was simple, and that pretense had come back to haunt them. Thres Vola, the Quillen infrastructure chief, requested an emergency meeting with Kale. They met in a private conference room, Thres's crystalline form reflecting light in agitated patterns. Chairman Mordrin, we need to discuss the situation honestly. The Assembly is experiencing systematic failure across multiple sectors. We are experiencing technical difficulties, Kale corrected. Nothing we cannot resolve with proper resource allocation. This is not a resource problem. This is a knowledge problem. Thres projected a holographic display showing the Assembly's infrastructure network. Look at this. Every system, every network, every operational component that is currently failing has one thing in common. They were all maintained by humans. The display highlighted thousands of connection points across the galaxy. Power management, life support systems, medical equipment, agricultural processing, transportation logistics, communication relays, waste management, water purification. The list went on endlessly, and every item glowed red to indicate failure or declining performance. I have spent the last 4 months investigating why we cannot simply replace human workers with equally qualified specialists from other species, Thres continued. The answer is disturbing. What we classified as routine maintenance was actually constant problem-solving at the highest technical levels. What we thought were simple procedures were actually sophisticated decision-making processes that required deep understanding of multiple scientific disciplines. Kale studied the display. You are saying humans were more technically capable than we believed. I am saying humans were operating at a level of technical sophistication that most of our species cannot match. We dismissed their work as simple because they made it look easy. That was our mistake. Surely we can train replacements. Our universities produce excellent engineers. Thres's form flickered with what might have been frustration. Chairman, I reviewed Dr. Sarah Okonkwo's educational background. She had advanced degrees in atmospheric chemistry, quantum mechanics, xenobiology, and systems engineering. She published 73 peer-reviewed papers on multi-species environmental control. She was not a maintenance worker. She was one of the leading experts in her field, and we paid her a technician's salary to prevent disasters we did not even know were possible. The holographic display zoomed in on specific failures. A terraforming colony, where the ecosystem had collapsed after human environmental managers departed. a medical facility where surgical success rates had plummeted without human equipment specialists, a mining operation that had been abandoned after the refining systems became unstable. How many humans were operating at this level? Kale asked. Based on my investigation, most of them. We systematically assigned our most complex problems to humans, and then convinced ourselves the problems were not complex because humans solved them reliably. Kale felt something he rarely experienced. Genuine concern. What is your recommendation? We need to bring them back. Apologize. Offer better terms. Whatever it takes. The humans closed their borders. They are not responding to communications. Then we go there. In person. We acknowledge our mistakes and negotiate in good faith. Thressa's form solidified into a more rigid structure, indicating determination. The alternative is watching the assembly collapse completely. Kale wanted to argue. His species had built empires that lasted millennia. They did not apologize to smaller species. They did not beg for help. But the data was undeniable. Without human expertise, the assembly was falling apart. I will need to consult with the Executive Council, Kale said finally. This is not a decision I can make alone. Make it quickly, Chairman. We are losing critical infrastructure every day. Some of these systems cannot be recovered once they fail completely. 3 weeks later, after extensive debate and several dramatic system failures that killed hundreds, the Executive Council authorized a diplomatic mission to Earth. Kale would lead it personally, accompanied by Thres Vola, 2 Vorlesh scientists, and a Quillan diplomat named Resh. They departed on an unarmed diplomatic vessel, broadcasting their status and intentions constantly. The journey to Sol System took 18 days. Throughout the trip, they received reports of worsening conditions back in assembly space. A habitat dome had lost atmospheric integrity, forcing evacuation of 15,000 residents. A critical trade route had become impassable due to navigation system failures. A pandemic was spreading because medical diagnostic equipment was malfunctioning across multiple worlds. When they finally entered human space, Earth's defense network activated immediately. Hundreds of automated weapons platforms tracked their ship. Targeting solutions updated constantly. A single aggressive move would result in instant destruction. They received no greeting, no acknowledgement, just silent observation from systems that could erase them without hesitation. After 6 hours, a communication channel opened. A human voice, female, professional, completely neutral. Unidentified vessel. You have entered restricted space. State your purpose. Kale activated his translator and spoke carefully. This is Chairman Kale Mordrin of the Galactic Commerce Assembly. I lead a diplomatic delegation seeking dialogue with Earth's government. We request permission to land and speak with your representatives. Silence stretched for several minutes. Then, stand by for verification. They waited for 11 hours, while Earth security systems presumably ran every possible check on their vessel and their backgrounds. Kale spent the time reviewing what he would say. Apologies did not come naturally to his species, but he had been practicing. Finally, the response came. You are cleared to land at Neutral Facility Omega, 7 in the North Atlantic region. Follow the provided flight path exactly. Any deviation will be interpreted as hostile action and met with immediate force. Do you understand? We understand. Thank you for seeing us. We have not agreed to see you, Chairman Mordrin. We have agreed to allow you to land while your request is considered. There is a difference. The flight path took them over Earth's oceans, giving them a view of the planet below. Kale had seen images of Earth in cultural databases, but seeing it directly was different. The world was vibrant, alive, functioning perfectly without the assembly's involvement. Humanity had not suffered from leaving. They had simply gone home. Facility Omega 7 was a small installation on an artificial island. The architecture was purely functional, designed to accommodate various species, but with no attempt at comfort or aesthetics. They were met by a human administrator named James Park, who showed them to basic quarters and informed them their request for a meeting was being reviewed. How long will that take? Resh asked. As long as necessary, James replied. Earth's diplomatic council meets according to their own schedule, not yours. They waited for 8 days. The quarters were adequate, but deliberately unwelcoming. The food was nutritionally appropriate, but bland. The temperature was slightly uncomfortable for everyone. Every detail communicated a message. You are tolerated, not welcomed. Cale tried multiple times to engage James in conversation, seeking any information about when they might meet with decision-makers. James was polite but provided nothing useful. Yes, their request was being considered. No, he did not know when they would receive an answer. Yes, they could wait or leave. Those were the only options. On the 9th day, they were informed that Earth's diplomatic council would see them. The meeting room was simple. White walls, basic furniture, no decoration. 5 humans sat on one side of a long table. The delegation sat opposite. Between them was 2 centuries of misunderstanding and 6 months of consequence. The human delegation was led by Director Elizabeth Okafor, a woman in her 50s, with gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She had been a systems engineer before entering government service. She understood exactly what her people had done for the Assembly and exactly how they had been treated. Chairman Mordrin, she began, her voice neutral. Thank you for traveling to Earth. Please explain why you are here. Cale had practiced this moment. Director Okafor, I am here to formally apologize on behalf of the Galactic Commerce Assembly. We failed to recognize the value of humanity's contributions. We dismissed expertise as routine work. We provided inadequate compensation and respect for services that were essential to the Assembly's functioning. We were wrong, and we wish to negotiate terms for humanity's return. Elizabeth's expression did not change. I appreciate the apology, Chairman. It is more than we received during our 243 years of membership. However, I need you to understand why we left. She activated a display showing personnel records. This is Dr. Sarah Okonkwo. She maintained atmospheric processors on Station Triumph for 18 years. Her formal title was maintenance technician. Her actual work required expertise in atmospheric chemistry, quantum mechanics, xenobiology, and systems engineering. She prevented 47 potentially catastrophic failures during her tenure, failures that would have killed thousands. Her supervisor called her work routine in every performance review and never once asked her to explain what she actually did. The display changed to show another record. This is Robert Tanaka. He managed power distribution for the Vegas sector for 22 years. His formal title was grid operator. His actual work required simultaneous monitoring of thousands of power nodes, understanding 17 different generation technologies, and making split-second decisions that affected millions of lives. He requested training support for his replacement 5 times. Each request was denied due to budget constraints. More records appeared, dozens of them, hundreds, each showing the same pattern. Humans doing incredibly complex work while being classified and compensated as simple laborers. We did not leave because we wanted better pay, Chairman Mordrin, Elizabeth continued. We left because we were tired of being invisible, tired of solving problems that everyone else thought were trivial, tired of preventing disasters that nobody noticed, tired of expertise being mistaken for simplicity. Cale felt his forearms trembling slightly. Shame was not an emotion his species experienced often, but he felt it now. We understand that now. The Assembly has experienced significant difficulties since your departure. We need your help. We are prepared to offer substantially improved terms, better compensation, better working conditions, formal recognition of human expertise, representation on the Executive Council. That is generous, Chairman, but help implies we have an obligation to return. We do not. The words hung in the air like ice. Thres Vola spoke up, their crystalline form resonating carefully. Director Okafor, surely humanity does not wish to see the Assembly collapse completely. Billions of lives depend on these systems. You are correct, Chief Thres. We do not wish to see people suffer. But that suffering is not our responsibility. It is yours. You built a civilization on systems you did not understand, maintained by workers you did not respect. The consequences of those choices belong to you. Then you refused to help. Cale asked, desperation creeping into his voice. I did not say that, Chairman. I said we have no obligation to help. Whether we choose to help depends entirely on whether the Assembly is willing to fundamentally change how it views human participation. Elizabeth stood and walked to the window overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. Humanity spent 2 centuries proving our value, only to be dismissed as simple workers. We are not interested in proving ourselves again. If the Assembly wants human expertise, you need to start by acknowledging that it is expertise, not simple work, not routine maintenance. Expertise. She turned back to face them. Here are our terms. Humanity will not rejoin the Assembly as members. We will offer technical assistance as an independent consulting collective. We will send specialists to address critical failures on a contract basis. We set our own terms, our own compensation, our own working conditions. We accept or decline assignments based on our assessment of their merit. And most importantly, every human specialist will have full authority in their area of expertise. No more supervisors who do not understand the work. No more being overruled by administrators who think they know better. If you want our help, you trust our judgment. Cale processed this. It was not what he had hoped for, but it was better than nothing. These terms would represent a significant shift in how the Assembly operates. Yes, they would. That is the point, Chairman. The Assembly needs to learn that expertise has value, that the people who keep your civilization running deserve respect and authority. If you cannot accept that, then you will need to find other solutions. And if we accept these terms, then we will send emergency response teams to address your most critical failures. They will stabilize systems, train your personnel, and transition operations to local control. This is not permanent support. This is giving you time to develop your own capabilities. Humanity is done being the Assembly's invisible workforce. Cale looked at his delegation. Thres Vola's form flickered in what might have been approval. Resh nodded slightly. The Vorlesh scientist seemed resigned but understanding. I will need to present these terms to the Executive Council, Cale said, but I believe they will accept. We have few alternatives. Then return to the Assembly. Chairman Mordrin, present our terms. If they are accepted, we will send our first response teams within 30 days. If they are rejected, we wish you well in finding other solutions. The meeting ended. The delegation was escorted back to their ship and given clearance to depart Earth system. As they left, Cale watched the blue planet shrink in the viewport. Humanity had called it home for hundreds of thousands of years. They had spread to the stars, joined the galactic community, and contributed far more than anyone had acknowledged. And when that contribution went unrecognized, they had simply walked away. No threats, no demands, just a quiet departure and closed borders. The Assembly had laughed at first. Now the Assembly was scrambling to survive. Thres Vola approached Cale in the ship's common area. Do you think the Council will accept these terms? They will accept them, Cale said. They have no choice. The question is whether we will learn anything from this experience. What do you mean? Humanity is not the only species whose work we may have undervalued. How many other essential workers have we dismissed as simple laborers? How many other experts have we ignored because their work seemed easy? This crisis should teach us to respect expertise wherever we find it. A valuable lesson, Chairman. Will we learn it? Cale's forearm spread in a gesture of uncertainty. Some of us will. Others will resent the humans forced us to acknowledge our dependence on them. Pride is difficult to swallow, even when reality demands it. The ship accelerated toward assembly space, carrying terms that would fundamentally reshape the relationship between humanity and the galaxy. Behind them, Earth continued its rotation, unconcerned with whether the assembly survived or collapsed. Humanity had made their choice. Now the galaxy had to make theirs.